howled through the night, carrying a scent that would change the world. Alrighty then, who's got Elvis? Who's got Elvis? Oh boy, lots of hands. Yes. Yeah, you. Alright, so one of the things that I really enjoyed doing when I was writing this series was developing the languages, the imaginary languages. And I did a couple of languages, but the two main ones are, of course, the elf language and the dwarf language. And the elf language, the ancient language, has a really, I liked it because I based it on partially in Old Norse, which I thought gave it a good sound and feel. And I'm going to read a lesson for you in the ancient language. Now, I have to apologize because I have an absolutely horrendous Elvish accent. Mainly because in Elvish you're supposed to roll your R's on the tip of your tongue like you would in Spanish or Italian, and I absolutely cannot do that. The only way I can roll my R's, and I apologize, I know this sounds horribly obscene, but the only way I can roll my R's is by wiggling my uvula. So I'm going to wiggle my uvula at you guys, and I hope you like it too. I know, it's terribly silly, but I love doing that. Okay. Attrasterni onovelduin, Maranalifa onitarta onner, undu everinia onovarda. Now, as much as I like the ancient language, my favorite one is definitely the Dwarvish, because one, I came up with it from scratch, and two, it has a wonderfully meaty sound to it. You can really sink your teeth into it. And unlike Elvish, I have an absolutely wonderful Dwarvish accent. Mainly because in Dwarvish, you are supposed to roll your R's by wiggling your uvula. So, let the wiggling commence. Barn Rathgarach, Barn Jürgen Carmeter, Nosketa Gora Bastarna, Durin Sessi Ratkevin, Joch is Warrod as Barzulagur, Durgrims as Schweldenbach Anuin, O Torrak Jürgen Brand. As you might imagine, dwarves are usually hoarse, and no one really much enjoys listening to their love poems. Okay, who's got a copy of Brissinger? Okay, yes, since you had a book coming up first anyway.
Yeah.
Or before, sorry, jet lag.
Okay.
Brain's not working, words getting muddled, imminent meltdown occurring. Okay, third book, Brissinger. As you might notice, this is a rather large book. And as most large books do, it has a lot of sentences in it. Now, I'm actually rather fond of some of these sentences. One of my favorites involves something about a bumbling bumblebee, which I probably should have cut, but I was a bit too fond of it. However, among all these many sentences, there's one that's my absolute favorite, and I want to read you my favorite sentence out of this whole book, okay? You ready? You ready? Die, puny human! I mean, really, what's the point of writing fantasy if you can't write lines like die, puny human every now and then? Alright, why don't you bring me your copy of the characters? Yes, when you're ready. Okay, now, if I can find the right page here. Oh, you're on page 69. I'm going to lose your spot. Sorry about that. I can tell you what happens, but I don't think you'd appreciate that. I can just tell you what's on the last page. You want to know? You sure? It's just simple. It's just the end. Okay. This is from the end of the first chapter of the last book. And for those of you who haven't read read past the first book or haven't read the last book, there aren't any spoilers in this, so you don't have to cover your ears. All right, well, let's go. Here we go. Hope you enjoy it. The sound was stabbing, slicing, shivering, like metal scraping against stone. Aragon's teeth vibrated in sympathy, and he covered his ears with his hands, grimacing as he twisted around, trying to locate the source of the noise. Saphira tossed her head, and even through the din, he heard her whine in distress. Aragon swept his gaze over the courtyard 2 separate times before he noticed a faint puff of dust rising up the wall of the keep from a foot-wide crack that had appeared beneath the blackened, partially destroyed window where Bloodgarn had killed the magician. As the squeal increased in intensity, Aragon risked lifting one of his hands off his ears to point at the crack. "Look!" he shouted to Arya, who nodded in acknowledgement. He replaced his hand over his ear. Without warning or preamble, the sound stopped. Aragon waited for a moment, then slowly lowered his hands, for once wishing that his hearing was not quite so sensitive. Just as he did, the crack jerked open wider, spreading until it was several feet across, and raced down the wall of the keep. Like a bolt of lightning, the crack struck and shattered the keystone above the doors to the building, showering the floor below with pebbles. The whole castle groaned, and from the damaged window to the broken keystone, the front of the keep began to lean outward. "Run!" Aragon shouted at the garden, though the men were already scattering to either side of the courtyard, desperate to get out from under the precarious wall. Aragon took a single step forward, every muscle in his body tense as he searched for a glimpse of Roran somewhere in the throng of warriors. At last, Aragon spotted him, trapped behind the last group of men by the doorway, bellowing madly at them, his words lost in the commotion. Then the walls shifted and dropped several inches, leading even further away from the rest of the building, pelting Roran with rocks, knocking him off balance, and forcing him to stumble backward under the overhang of the doorway. As Roran straightened from a crouch, his eyes met Aragon's, and in his gaze, Aragon saw a flash of fear and helplessness, quickly followed by resignation, as if Roran knew that no matter how quickly he ran, he could not possibly reach safety in time. A wry smile touched Roran's lips, and the wall fell. Does he live? Does he die? Read chapter 2. Now, I would love to take your answers and